Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Wait for a few people to get in here before we get started. Good afternoon. We're going to wait for a few people to get in here before we get started. I got a lot of things to cover today. Got a lot of interesting things that we're going to cover and talk about today. So we're going to give a couple of people some time to get in here. And then from there, we're going to get into this situation as it should be. Did Tony pay you? I don't know what he would be paying me for. I never asked Tony for anything. I don't want anything from Tony. I would not accept money from Tony. So, I'm not really sure what he would be paying me for, actually. But, so no. The answer to the question is no. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And as people kind of trickle in, they'll, pick up where we're at that point. And of course, I will be saving this video so it will be able to be rewatched at a later time. Now, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions, feel free to use the little question icon in the bottom left of your screen. It'll make it easier for me to get to questions when I get to the end. Scrolling through the chat feed is a little bit difficult. And I don't want to miss anybody's questions. Everybody's questions have value, and I want to try to get to as many as I can. So it's easier for me if you just tap the question mark icon in the lower right-hand side of the screen. Lower left-hand side of the screen. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we get into this, I want to cover, a lot of you guys see when I post, I always talk about hashtag get real woke. That's my thing, hashtag get real woke. But what is that about? Why do I say hashtag get real woke, right? So, you hear in the African American all the time, stay woke or I'm woke or all of those different things. But, when I talk about getting real woke, what I'm talking about is, great, you've woken up to the fact that there are social injustices in the United States, that African Americans are disproportionately affected as it relates to other ethnicities because of what is going on. However, right, at the end of the day, what do we do about that? Getting real woke is about getting the tools necessary and arming yourself with the knowledge and skill set necessary to be able to combat these issues. And so a big part of that is financial literacy, right? So getting real woke is about having that financial literacy, having that toolkit to be able to, develop a business, to be able to scale a business, to be able to generate the kind of revenue necessary to be able to combat a lot of these things that are going on in the community, right? So when I say hashtag get real woke, I'm talking about get woke to the things that really matter. So that, and look at it all, not just part of it, get that knowledge on everything. We got to get real woke around here. So that's what hashtag get real woke is about. Now that I've covered that, let's get started. So, before I get into anything, I want to cover a thing that's been going around the African American community for quite some time now. And I want to dispel some myths and some nonsense. Right? So let's get into that. So the first thing I want to cover, so I make sure that people don't miss it as I'm running through this, is the CPN, right? I constantly hear about this CPN, and I've heard different names for it. Like I've heard, credit protection number. I've heard client protection number. I've heard customer protection number. All of these things are synonymous with the same thing. They all tie into a CPN. Okay, now, what is it that this CPN is claimed to be? So, people or proprietors that sell CPN numbers, they claim them to be a legal way to protect your social security number. That's one of the sales tactics they use. They say it's a legal way to protect your social security number because by law, you don't have to give your social security number to anyone because of identity theft. It sounds good. Okay, so another thing they say is it's a new, clean, and legal, legitimate credit profile for you if you have a bad credit history to be able to get a clean slate and a fresh start and build your credit all over again. Okay, all of these are false. So number one, you do not have to provide your social security number. It's not a requirement, but if you don't provide your social security number, then a lender or a job has the right to not employ you or not lend to you. So you have the right not to give your social security number, but they have the right not to deal with you. And it's really that straightforward, right? Now, what is a CPN really? What is it really? I'm going to tell you what it is really, right? CPNs are issued a few different ways. These proprietors of these CPNs that are giving you these numbers are acquiring these numbers or instructing you to do a few different things. And I'm going to cover what they are. Number one, some of these CPNs are actually deceased people's social security numbers that the proprietor has gotten through whatever means they have gotten them from and are issuing them to you because they haven't been used for a period of time. Some of these CPNs are social security numbers from homeless people who have been on the streets for a really, really long time, don't have a credit profile, address history, or anything like that, right? So they're being used as a way to try to give you a new social security number or a new credit profile, right? So there's that. So that's one of the ways that these CPN numbers are being gotten and given to other people. So that's number one. Okay, so another way that this is being done is through what's called an ITIN number, an individual taxpayer identification number. So if you are a foreign national generally and you have the legal right to be here and you have gained work authorization, but you are not a citizen or a permanent resident, you are just under some sort of other status, oftentimes what the Social Security Office will issue you in order for you to be able to file taxes is what's called an individual taxpayer identification number, right? Now, the interesting thing about this is these proprietors of these CPNs are getting ITIN numbers that have not been used or have been abandoned because the person is no longer in the United States or has lost their work authorization, right? And now they're giving these things to other people as a way to use. The third thing that these CPN proprietors are doing, right, are instructing people to incorporate LLCs or file for a employment identification number by filing with the IRS that you are a sole proprietor. So let's say your name is John Smith, right? So they'll tell you file to the IRS, go to the IRS website and tell them that you're a sole proprietor and the name of your business is John Smith. And then they'll give you an employer identification number and you can use that just like a social security number. Okay, so these are the three types of common practices that are used by these CPN peddlers, these providers of these CPNs. Now, let me give you some facts, right? First of all of this is illegal under federal law. It is fraud, right? Because anytime that you knowingly or willfully try to obfuscate your material position for some sort of personal gain, that is fraud. So that's that, right? So in aspect to this, so let's say you're using someone's social security number that's deceased or homeless, right? Oftentimes what the CPN provider will tell you to do is not to use your real address or your real phone number, but to use a different address and a different phone number, so it makes it more difficult for the bank to tie your name in when they're doing checking to your real social security number, right? So this is fraud. You are trying to obfuscate who you really are by providing conflicting information to a lending institution for your personal benefit of getting a loan. You are not disclosing, or you are trying to hide material facts in your credit profile that would deem you a higher risk or unfinanceable. This is bank fraud under federal law, right? Not only that, it's the same thing with the ITIN number and the EIN number. You are trying to obfuscate and not disclose material facts that a lender should have knowledge of to be able to properly assess your risk and your credit worthiness, right? Now, not only that, when you use a deceased person or a homeless person's social security number, you are committing identity theft under federal law. And depending on the level of the identity theft, right, you can be subject to a minimum mandatory prison sentence in federal prison of 24 months minimum, right? So engaging in using a deceased person or a homeless person's social security number in order to obfuscate your true credit worthiness can get you a minimum of 24 months in federal prison. It is not a good idea. You are engaging in identity theft, right? Now, let's get into how easy it is for a lender or the IRS to discover that you are doing this, right? So first of all, right, all lenders who engage in any type of lending conduct what's called KYC and AML. Know your client and anti-money laundering, right? They have customer identification policies and procedures in place that are in accordance with the United States Patriot Act's Bank Secrecy Act. They are required under federal law to verify your identity and verify the source of your funds to ensure that your funds do not come from a federally barred individual, company, or government that has been listed on the Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign and Asset Control list, right? What you have to know about federally chartered banks and FINRA regulated investment banks is that they are members of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They fall under the provisions of Section 314A, which 314A is what the Department of Treasury uses to send the banks a list every single week that has a list of people on it that are not supposed to have been done business with. If any account is in their institution that is on that list, it is automatically flagged and it is filed with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the Compliance and Risks Department and Legal Department take instruction from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at that point to what they are supposed to do and how they are supposed to dispose of that account, as well as the assets in that account. The other part of the section is Section 314B. Section 314B of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network is information sharing system, right? So the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has a database, a platform that financial institutions can register for free with to share information on suspicious activity that has occurred with a business or individual client directly to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network by filing what's called a suspicious activities report. So how this works is like this. If I'm conducting KYC and AML on you and I run that social security number, that name, and that address address. What you don't know is the tools and software platforms that are being used can actually show when that social security number or ITIN or EIN was issued. Social security numbers are issued at date of birth, right? So or shortly thereafter. So the fact of the matter is, if you are, let's say, 30 years old, 25 years old, 35 years old, and the number that you have provided for your social security number is, let's say, a homeless person, and it shows that it was issued and that person should be 68, this is already suspicious activity. If you used an EIN and that EIN was just created 6 months ago, well, this is suspicious activity. We automatically know at that point that this file needs to go through what's called enhanced due diligence. And at that point, because we have questions on the validity or veracity of the social security number provided, we will then file with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and or reach out directly to the IRS ourselves to get validity of that social security number. And once it is discovered that that social security number is not associated with the person who has put it down on the paper, you have now engaged in bank fraud. That is reality, right? So I wanted to be very, 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 very clear on this, right? CPNs, this whole discussion on CPN is fraudulent. It is fraud. There is no such thing as a new number that you can be issued from some third party that is not the IRS, right? That gives you some fresh start. There is no number that someone, a third party that is not the IRS, can issue you as a legal means to protect your social security number. And anyone telling you that that is the case is a liar. They are engaged in fraudulent practices. And if you engage yourself in these fraudulent practices, you are subject to the full breadth and depth of federal law and the federal penalties that come thereto. Let's be very, 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 very clear about that, right? And in case you didn't know, you can't stand up in a federal court of law and say, I didn't know. Ignorance is not a sufficient defense under the federal legal system. You get hit just the same whether you knew or you didn't know. You willfully intended to obfuscate your information for your personal gain. You have engaged in fraud. Very straightforward. It's not hard. Now, that we have gotten that out of the way, there are legal ways to get a new social security number according to the IRS. There are legal ways to get a new social security number according to the IRS. The IRS issues new social security numbers free of charge. So anyone telling you that they can get you a new number from the IRS that wants to charge you money is lying to you, because the IRS issues new social security numbers for free, but they are only issued under extreme circumstances. And let me tell you what some of those extreme circumstances are. If you are a victim of repeated, egregious identity theft, and you have the sufficient documentation and verifiable proof, such as police reports, legal filings, discussions with creditors, discussions with bureaus, and this has been an ongoing pattern of identity theft for a substantial period of time, you may be eligible for a new social security number based on that fact. If you are a victim of a potentially serious and life-threatening situation, such as stalking, repeated domestic violence, an attempted murder victim, extreme situations that put your life and safety at risk, and you have sufficient documentation to prove this has been going on for a substantial period of time, and you are in fear for your life, your safety, your health, and your well-being, the IRS may issue you a new Social Security number. If you are an individual placed in the federal WITSEC program, that is the Witness Security Program, generally you are granted an entirely new identity and all documents associated with that, to include a new Social Security number. These are about the only ways that the IRS is issuing you a new Social Security number. Outside of that, you hit. What you got when you were born is what you got. Period. It is no more complicated or simple than that. Now, here's the caveat. Even if you can meet the substantial burden of proof and required documentation to encourage the IRS to give you a new Social Security number, guess what? The old Social Security profile is merged with the new one. In almost all circumstances, with the exception, right, of if you are in the Witness Security Program. That is about the only time that they don't merge the old profile with the new one. Other than that, they are merging your old Social Security profile with your new one. So while you got a new Social Security number, all your baggage, all your problems come with you. Because when they merge your profile, guess what? The credit bureaus are going to get a notification and they are going to merge your profile too. So that bankruptcy you think you just got out of, that foreclosure you think you just got out of, that judgment you think you just got out of, them student loans, that tax lien, all of that stuff, that child support obligation that you think you just beat. Nah, you ain't beat it. You definitely didn't beat it. It's coming with you. It's coming with you. It'll be on that new profile. It'll be associated with that new Social Security number. That's yours. Hold that. That is reality, right? So let's be very clear about these things so that way we now know the facts. So you know now when somebody tells you, yo, I got a CPN number for you, you tell them to go fuck themselves. Straight across. I'm good. I'm straight. I don't need those headaches. There are no shortcuts to success in this life. Period. You got to earn it. You got to put the work in. And if you make mistakes along the way and you dig yourself a hole, well, you got to dig yourself out of that hole. This is how this works. It's just how it works. Now, that we have covered those things in extensive detail, let's talk about what a FICO score is, right? What is FICO? FICO stands for the Fair Isaac Credit Organization. Stands for the Fair Isaac Credit Organization. Why was FICO created, right? Why was the Fair Isaac Credit Organization created? Let's talk about that. So back before you had the Fair Credit Isaac Organization, right, what you had was, lenders had a hard time, making credit decisions, right? It took a lot of time. You had to sit down with the person. You had to get to know the person. You had to have long conversations with them. And this was a long, drawn-out process to be able to judge credit worthiness. And it wasn't a consistent way to judge credit worthiness. So sometimes you got it right, sometimes you got it wrong, and this was too risky and took too much time and resources for financial institutions. So they decided that they would get together and essentially create an organization and a uniform set of that. Guys, for some reason my video paused, but I'm back. So we say on Wall Street that FICO represents character. FICO represents character. Your FICO score represents your character. Why is that? It provides us a detailed snapshot of who you are as a person, right?
Everybody's got reasons. Everybody's got stories. Everybody's got issues, right? We do not care about your story. We do not care about your issue. We do not care about any of that. What we care about is that you pay your bills on time. That's what we care about. And your FICO scoring and your credit profile will tell us whether you are a person that pays their bills on time. Do you have honor? Do you keep your word? It's very simple. This is all about your character as a person, right? So let me break it down for you. It's very, very simple. So, when you're a lender, you care about one thing and one thing only. If I lend you some money and I tell you that my interest payment is due on the 1st, I want to know that every 1st of the month you got my money. I need that. On time, every month, every time. No delay. So your credit profile is going to tell me if you have the ability to be able to do that based on prior agreements that you've entered into with other lenders. So if I look at your credit profile and I see you got a whole bunch of charge-offs, you got a whole bunch of late payments, you got a whole bunch of collection accounts, right? What that tells me, whatever you want to say, whatever your story is, doesn't matter, because what your credit profile tells me is that you are a liar. You are not a man or woman of your word. You do not do the things you say you are going to do. You make promises that you cannot keep. You agree to terms that you are unable to uphold. And so because of that, right, I'm not lending you a dime because I will not be the next victim of your fiscal imprudence, your lack of discipline, and your lying lips. It's that simple. If I look at your credit profile, right, and I see that you have a tax lien on your credit profile, you may have a story. You may have a reason. It may make sense in your mind. I don't have time to hear your story. I got time to lend this money out. And based on what I see in your credit profile, you think you smarter than the IRS. You think you smarter than the state tax collector. You think you above the rules of paying taxes. So if you're not going to pay the government, I don't stand a chance because them niggas can put you in jail. It's very, very straightforward. If you have a child support obligation, here we go, I'm finna hurt some feelings today. If you have a child support obligation, right, on your credit report, right? So we understand that family is the most important thing, right? So if you don't do nothing, you provide and take care of your family, right? So if I see you got a child support obligation on your credit report, it tells me that you're a deadbeat father. Why? Because you're not taking care of your children. Moreover, you're not taking care of the woman that you chose to lay down with and have that child with, right? Because as a man, you should not only be taking care of your child, you should be taking care of the woman that you had the child with. Because at the end of the day, guess what? If the woman ain't good and she keep your child majority of the time, how in the world can the child be good? So the reality of the situation, you's a deadbeat no matter how you cut it. Now, you might have a story that your baby mama crazy, that y'all be beefing, that she trying to fuck up your life and all of that. And that may be the case. But you knew her ass was crazy before you laid down with her. And if you didn't, you sure damn should have. Shouldn't have laid down so quick then. That's your problem. That's your choice. That's your story. It's not my story. My story is that you's a deadbeat father and I'm not fucking with you because if you can't take care of your family. So sorry about that. It paused again, but I'm back. Okay, now. FICO ties into all aspects of your life. All aspects. Right? So you have to understand that there are only two types of people that check your FICO score: lenders and a smart woman. That's it. So FICO score wasn't created for your benefit. It was created for the benefit of the lenders and a woman who's smart enough to understand that she probably shouldn't get into a bed. She probably shouldn't get into a relationship or get into bed with somebody who can't finance a plate of food. Because if you can't finance a plate of food, baby, you definitely can't finance a house. which means that you can't create stability. It's a problem. Let me stop. So let me. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I'm gonna go on and leave that one alone. Like I'm gonna leave that alone. But reality of the situation is this, right? So FICO ties to all aspects of your life. If you want to get a credit score, if you want a credit card, they're gonna look at your FICO score. If you want to buy a car, you're gonna probably have to finance the car, so they're gonna want to look at your FICO score. If you want to buy a house, they're gonna look at your FICO score. This is reality, right? So it ties into all aspects of your life. Anytime you want to borrow some money, they're going to check that FICO score, right? They're going to look at that. Now, so if you've ever noticed, right, some of you have probably tried to go in and get a mortgage and successfully gotten a mortgage. And when the bank pulled your credit report and looked at your FICO score, right, you probably saw like a 720, right? And then maybe later you went out, or maybe even the same day, you went out and decided that you wanted to get a car. And when they looked at your FICO score at the auto dealership, you noticed that your FICO score was a 710, right? Or maybe a 700. And you wonder why it is that an auto lender's FICO score looks different from a mortgage lender's FICO score. Why are the FICO scores different if it's all the same organization? That's a great question. Let me explain that to you, right? So FICO scoring works on models, and there are several different FICO scoring models. And you have to understand that because each FICO scoring model weights things differently, right? So for example, you have FICO score model 8. FICO score model 8 is what's most widely used amongst lenders currently, right? You have FICO score model 5. It's commonly used in the mortgage industry by most lenders, right? So most lenders aren't using FICO score model 8. They're still using FICO score model 5, which weights things markedly differently than FICO score model 8. And so the FICO score that you see under FICO score model 8 will be different than the FICO score you see under FICO score model 5 because things are weighted differently, right? Now, you also have FICO auto score 8. FICO auto score 8 is commonly used in auto lending. So if you're trying to get a car, they're not using FICO score model 8 or FICO score model 5. They're using either FICO auto score 8 or FICO auto score 5, which is an older version of the auto scoring model for auto lenders, right? So you have to understand what FICO scoring model your lender is using so you can get an understanding of where your FICO score will fall. Now, if you're trying to get a credit card, right? So most lenders are using FICO bank card score 8, which is completely differently than an auto score and a mortgage score, right? And some are still using FICO Bank Card Score 5, which is an older version of the bank card scoring model. So you have to understand what model the credit card company is using to get an understanding of where your FICO score will fall, right? See, generally you want to walk into a lender already knowing where your FICO score is, right? Because the interesting thing is if you have a credit report, a legitimate credit report from a legitimate provider, right, within 30 days of the time you walk into the lender's office, generally they can use that credit report without having to pull their own. Or they can do a soft inquiry, not a hard inquiry, just to check the veracity of the credit report you've brought in, right? So that's another conversation though. Now, FICO, the Fair Isaac Credit Organization, has just come out with FICO Score 9, FICO Auto Score 9, and FICO Bank Card Score 9, right? So that's been out now for a couple years. It's still gaining acceptance, but currently, you know, the commonly used FICO scoring model is FICO Score Model 8. Now, with that in mind, right, you know, understanding these different FICO models is very, very important to understanding where your credit will fall, right? When you're talking to a lender. When you walk into a financial institution and you know about different FICO scoring models and where your FICO score falls based on the different FICO scoring models that they could be using, I mean, they're a lot more willing to deal with you because it shows them that you're on top of your character. You're on top of the process. You're taking care of business the way you need to, and that gives people comfort, right? Now, let's talk about FICO scores versus Vantage scores, right? So I'm pretty sure a lot of you have Credit Karma, and I'm sure a lot of you pull or look at your credit score every time they give you a notification via Credit Karma, right? Credit Karma is not using a FICO scoring model. They are using a Vantage scoring model. That model is markedly different, and majority, over 85% of lenders do not use the Vantage score. The Vantage score is not a good indication of credit. Sorry guys, it paused again. So, going into a lender and saying, I pulled my score using Credit Karma, and based on that, I have a 720, no lender's going to take that seriously because they know Credit Karma is using the Vantage scoring system, and they know that they don't use the Vantage scoring system, so the Vantage score has no benefit to them at all. So let's be very clear about that. Credit Karma is nice to look at. It's nice to screenshot that nice little lady that you're talking to, or that nice little man you're talking to show you got good credit. But keep it there. Don't take it to the lenders. It's a waste of your time. All right. Now, moving further forward. There are 3 credit reporting bureaus. There are 3 credit reporting bureaus. They are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Those are the 3 credit reporting bureaus. When you get your FICO scores, they are produced by TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So if you've ever looked at what's called a tri-merge credit report, right, you'll notice it has 3 scores on it. That's each credit bureau reporting your score based on the data they have available for your credit profile with their bureau, right? So when you go in to get a mortgage, what you might oftentimes hear if you've ever worked with a mortgage broker, or if you've worked with a lender at a financial institution that likes to talk a little bit, you might have heard them ask you, what is your mid FICO score? What is your mid FICO score? What they're asking you is, let's say you have a 740, a 720, and a 710 FICO score. Your mid FICO score, if you have a 730, 720, and 710, your mid FICO score is 720, and that is what they are going to use to underwrite your mortgage position. They don't take the high score. They don't take the low score. They take the middle score. Now, why is it that FICO scores are different from one bureau to another bureau? So this has to understand, this goes into an understanding of how companies report information, right? So you might have an auto loan from, let's say, GM Financial, right? GM Financial may only be reporting to Experian, or they may only be reporting to Equifax, or they may only be reporting to TransUnion, or they may be reporting to 2 out of 3 of the bureaus. Not everyone you get credit from reports to all 3 bureaus. Not everyone you get credit from report to 2 bureaus.
Some, a lot, only report to one. The commonly used one is Equifax, actually. And the reason why that is because for a company to be able to report information to the Bureau, they have to pay a fee for that. And some companies just don't want to pay a fee to 3 different bureaus to report information. They just want to pay it to one and keep it moving to widen their profit margins and lower their expenses, right? So oftentimes when you see different FICO scores from the 3 bureaus, it's because some lenders are reporting to some and not others, right? And if you compare your credit reports between the 3 bureaus, you will notice that some things appear on one bureau that don't appear on the other 2. Some appear on 2 bureaus that don't appear on the other 2. And some things, like federally backed student loans, appear on all 3 bureaus. So you have to be mindful of what's being reported where, right? So you understand and get a full picture of what's happening with your overall credit profile based on how it's being reported by the various bureaus. Now, a lot of you probably don't know this, but the credit reporting bureaus are in the business gathering, the business of information gathering. They are in the business of information gathering. The credit reporting bureaus are the largest data aggregator of consumer credit information in the United States. The credit bureaus are the largest aggregator of consumer data, credit data information in the United States. Because they understand this, right? Guess what they are in the business of doing? They are in the business of selling your consumer credit data information. So a lot of people, have you ever gotten a credit card in the mail that said you were pre-qualified for a credit card with XYZ company? The reason why they know that you're pre-qualified is because they've bought information from one or more of the bureaus, and based on the information and data they have on you that they've purchased from the bureaus, they have been able to do a soft underwriting and determine that you are likely to be able to qualify for a credit card from them once you go through a full underwriting. So they send you like one of their little plastic sample cards and a letter telling you how you're pre-qualified for X. Give us a call. They want to give you some credit. So a lot of people don't understand that the credit bureaus are in the business of selling information. That is where they make most of their money. So let's talk about the laws that govern credit profile reporting and debt collection. Okay. So there are 2 federal laws that govern the way credit works in the United States. One deals with reporting, one deals with collection. So the federal law that deals with reporting is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, 15 U.S.C. subsection 1681. So everybody's got some homework today, right? Everybody needs to go read in its entirety 15 U.S.C. subsection 1681, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Read it in its entirety. You can Google 15 U.S.C. subsection 1681 and it will pull up the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You need to read it in its entirety, because if you don't understand what the law is that governs the way the way that people report
information to your credit profile, how is it that you're able to defend yourself from erroneous information or information that you have no recollection of, right? See, the Fair Credit Reporting Act tells you that if you notice something in your credit profile that may be erroneous or that you have no recollection of, you have the right to dispute that with the credit bureaus or directly with the original lender if they still have the file, or the collections agency if the file has been sold to the collection agency, right? They have 30 days to respond, right? So now, the second law, if they don't respond in 30 days, it has to be removed off the credit. That is the law. But you don't know that unless you've read 15 U.S.C. subsection 1681, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Now, next, the second law that governs credit in the United States governs how debt collectors are able to collect debt. And this is called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or 15 U.S.C. subsection 1692. That's 15 U.S.C. subsection 1692, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. That's your other homework for tonight. You need to read that one too, right? So, under 15 U.S.C. subsection 1692, it explains that you have the right, and I'm just giving you an overview here, you have the right to ask the debt collector or the lender to prove that you owe the debt. You have the right to do that, right? But you have to understand something. And this is where people go wrong. And this is where a lot of these self-proclaimed credit repair experts mess up. There is a difference between verifying debt and validating debt. And there is a law specific to validating debt. It is 15 U.S.C. subsection 1692G. It's under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and it specifically talks about validation of debt. What is the difference between verification and validation? When you dispute with the credit bureaus anything on your credit profile, they are going to verify the debt with either the original lender or the collection company if the collection company now owns the debt, right? All that means is that they're going to make contact with the original lender or collection company, and they're going to ask a very simple question. Does this debt, this customer or this client or this person, right, is disputing this debt with our bureau? Is this debt theirs? And all the collection company is going to do, if they have time to respond and can get to it within the 30-day window, is respond back. Yes, the debt's his. We verify the debt's his, right? And then the credit bureau is going to come back to you and say the debt is verified. Done. Right? However, right, you can take it a step further. If the lender comes back and says, yes, we verify the debt is his, well, how did you verify the debt is mine? Now you can ask them to validate the debt. Validate the debt. Show me the amount of money I owe. Show me the interest charges. Show me the payments I have or haven't made that you have in your file. Show me the instrument of transfer that gives you the right to be able to collect the debt. Show me that you're licensed in my state to collect debt. By law, they have to provide you these things. And if they can't, then there's no way they can validate the debt. And if they cannot validate the debt, they can't enforce collection on it. And by law, it has to be removed. But you know this if you read the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, 15 U.S.C. subsection 1692. 1992G. This stuff is talked about. You can even go as far as tell them, provide me a copy of my ID and my signature to show that you verified that I was the person who actually applied for this debt in accordance with the U.S. Patriot Act's Bank Secrecy Act. Show me that you conducted KYC and AML to ensure that I was that the person that applied in my name was actually me. They don't have a copy of your ID or a valid signature. They don't have a legitimate loan. They didn't verify you as the person. They don't have a legitimate right to be trying to enforce a debt. So it's pretty straightforward, right? So these are the basic things that I wanted to cover today. Oh, one other thing, right? So I talked about the different FICO scoring models, right? So what I recommend for everyone who can and has the financial means to get it, it's fairly cheap. It's $40 a month for the Premier. I would go to myfico.com and I would sign up for the monthly subscription to the Premier account, because it gives you all three credit bureaus. Your credit report for all three credit bureaus. It's owned by Fair Isaac Credit Organization, and it will show you what your FICO score looks like under all of the different FICO models. You can even run simulators to show what happens if you pay certain things off, or if you do certain things within your credit profile, how it may be able to raise your credit and boost your FICO score. So, there's a lot of useful tools inside of myfico.com. So I would recommend that anyone who can go get myfico.com and manage your credit. So a question was asked, and if you have a question, please ask within the click the question icon, the question mark icon in the lower left-hand corner, and write your question in there so I can get to it. But I did see a question come around asking about why is it better to write a letter as opposed to dispute online. Okay, the reason why that is, right, is because in this day and age, right, you can get record online. You have an audit trail online because you can see the date you applied and all of those things, and time runs from the date you applied, right? But generally the common conception is that the common belief is that by writing the letter and sending it off certified mail, return receipt requested, you have a physical paper trail and document of when they received it and who signed for it. So that way, the time window starts from the date that they received it, right? So once they receive it on that date, your 30-day window starts. If they haven't responded by the 30-day window, then, it has to be removed, right? But that's something I'm going to get into more next week. Next week I want to talk about credit mix. I want to talk about, kind of how that works, how to begin the process of repairing credit, how to begin the process of building credit. We're going to talk a little bit about utilization rate and things like that. So that's next week's discussion. So with that, I've covered everything that I wanted to cover in this class today, in this discussion. If anybody has any questions, I have a few minutes. I'm willing to take questions now and answer questions. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Okay, so I don't see any questions coming through. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that means that I covered the concept so well that no one has questions, it was easily digestible, or if it's because nobody wants to ask a question. I'm not really sure. But so that's that. So with that in mind, as I see no one has any questions, I will be saving this video so people will be able to rewatch this video and see what I covered today. And I look forward to talking to everyone again next week. Thank you guys. I will be doing a part 2. So I'll be doing Understanding Credit Part 2 next week, next Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will be doing a part 2 to this. So I hope everyone really enjoyed this discussion. I hope everybody learned a lot. And as always, if you have questions, you can always reach out. You can always reach out to me via DM and Instagram. Tell your people about me. Have people follow me. So they can learn too. And share nice comments about what you think about each course. That's always helpful too. So I appreciate everyone.